Hi, Moriah from Mogility here. In this YouTube channel from Mogility, we walk through safe and other agile topics. In today's video, I'm going to be walking through working with globally dispersed teams. For any of us who have been in the IT world or even have lived through COVID, and we had the ability to work remotely, we have probably experienced at some time working with people who were in different time zones, people who were in different states. And this does often add some complications. This can add complications around meeting times, around escalating issues, and working on projects. However, these issues definitely can be resolved. I have a few recommendations on how we can do this, and these might be a little different than what you've heard before. So let me go ahead and talk through the topics I'd like to cover, which are humanize humans, communicate to understand, and boundaries are your friend. All right, jumping in. So humanize humans. What do I mean? So often, whenever we are working with people, it's very easy for us to forget that people are comprised of the things that have made them who they are today. This is their past and their current. Those are things that have happened to them, around them, and even within their own minds. And sometimes I myself, think that people have the same stance or same core moral compass, I should say, that I do. And that is a huge misconception. It is really important for us to understand that each person is an individual and each person sees the world in a very unique way, and their perspective matters. So, to really get to know someone at the core, it's hard. It's very hard, especially if you are working with a team that is dispersed, because you don't get that opportunity to see them in the office and, have what we like to call water cooler talk and discuss, the intricacies of our families or our friends or activities that we're interested in outside of work, and it really helps you gauge someone a bit better. So I have some recommendations on how in this globally dispersed world, how we can do this. So I have ranked these from what I find to be the most difficult at number one to the easiest at number three. So in regard to discussing fears and desires, so you can do this a couple ways. I mean, you can schedule time with each other in one-on-one conversations, really get to know each other and have discussions around their fears and desires. And this sounds a bit weird because you're like, oh, we're not therapists, like we're just coworkers. But it's okay to have these conversations because we are humans and we do need to get to know each other, because the moment you stop seeing someone as a human is the moment that you treat them badly without even really considering how they feel. And that is a recipe for disaster and broken relationships and a lack of trust, which is terrible for a team. Or you could do this as a group. So maybe you have team building activities and you have ways of asking these questions. Like maybe you just ask, like, what is your biggest fear in life? And people start sharing, and you can kind of get an idea as to what drives them. What are your biggest desires? What are your goals outside of work and within work? Those things are very important to know. Sometimes it's hard though, because people without trust, they don't really feel comfortable sharing this. You might find a few people who are comfortable, but most people aren't. And the second one is discuss behavior as it happens. So if you are working with people and you start recognizing behavior that is out of the norm, or even behavior that is repetitive. So if someone is very enthusiastic about taking on new tasks, and they are always, you can discuss that with the person and ask them, is this something that really drives you in your career? Do you really love taking on new tasks? It's something I notice you get excited about. And the person will probably be excited to answer the question and let you know that, yeah, definitely, I'm excited by new things. I'm excited by new opportunities. And so you'll know that someone's desire in that case is to have freedom and flexibility in their job, and they like to experience new things. They like to dive into new opportunities. However, if you notice that someone is very rigid whenever they are in a situation where people are questioning them or their knowledge, you can pull them aside and have a discussion around that. I notice that whenever we have discussions around X, you become a bit rigid, and I just want to understand how I can help and what's going on when this is happening. This one I will say is difficult as well. And the reason is because this can come off as a bit confrontational at times. And if someone is shutting down, or even if they're having more of the what's seen as negative behavior, more of that rigidity in my example, they might shut down a bit. So this one is a bit difficult as well. The last one, I will give the disclaimer, I am not an Enneagram expert. I am a bit Enneagram obsessed. And what is all of this Enneagram? It sounds almost like a cereal whenever I say it several times. Enneagram is a test that provides a number, numbers 1 through 9. And with that number, you get some insight into the human side of people. So this is a test that shows you your behaviors. More like that would be more similar to like the DISC test or Myers-Briggs, which are both really great tests. But the Enneagram really dives into who you are internally, your moral compass, what your fears and desires are, what drives you. And I have used this in the past on multiple teams and even with my peers and my leadership. I find this test to be very helpful, and it's very accurate. There are a few outliers that when they take the test, they get a result that they really do not feel fits them at all. Which is why it's important for you to dig into an Enneagram website. I like the Enneagram Institute as it gives you a lot of information. So it's a quick test, takes about 7 minutes, and I usually use the Truity, Truity, the Truity Enneagram test. I don't pay for it. At the very end, it tells you your result in a little paragraph. Don't pay attention to the pie chart, it's confusing. But I will say that this is the quickest way that I've found to really understand people and to help them grow as individuals. Once again, I'm not an Enneagram expert, but I do find it to be very helpful, and I use it both in my personal life and in my professional life. Definitely try it after this video and see what you think. Leave your comments. I'm very curious. All right, so communicate to understand. Well, you might be thinking, like, I already do this. I every time I communicate, I want to understand. Well, I will say that we as humans, we often go into conversations with a expectation of what we might want to get out of that conversation, or what we want the person to get out of, especially whenever it comes to working. We're a bit more rigid in our communication style, and especially with globally dispersed teams, because again, you don't have that water cooler talk typically. And so your focus is really on like getting the meeting over so you can get back to your work, or to get whatever decision made so that way you can go ahead and move forward. So I will say, whenever you are communicating with people, just make sure that you're asking questions to gain clarity. So, those statements around what I'm hearing you say is, and wait for them to reply. If you've misunderstood them, it's very important to ensure that you are understanding. And when I say understand, that's not focusing on agreeing. You don't have to agree to understand. The focus really should be on realizing their perspective. So if you can understand someone's perspective, then you will understand at a deeper level than just trying to agree with them or to get them to agree with you. That's more of having an argument and trying to get your opinion or your thoughts pushed on somebody else, which should never be the focus. The focus should always be to understand people by realizing their perspective. Boundaries are your friend. Let me repeat that. Boundaries are your friend. And I say this because this is so critical, not just with globally dispersed teams, but in our personal lives. Having an idea of the things that you will and will not tolerate in your life are critical to your happiness, your mental well being, which impacts every aspect of your life. Whenever you're working with globally dispersed teams, I will say that this is very critical as well, because people across the world do work in different time zones. I mean, even here where I live in the United States, there's different time zones across the U.S. And it's important for me to be respectful of people's working hours. I do have a video and an article that I wrote about working agreements, and you can see both of those for more details if you would like. Or you can reach out to me through mogilitytraining.com, and I would be so happy to help you working on how to have better working relationships with your globally dispersed teams. A couple things that I am outlining in number 2 and 3 here. So a couple things that you should be discussing as a team in regard to this working agreement is, what is this cross time zone team time? So this is a time that your team would be coming together. This would be, doing maybe your daily stand-ups, doing your retrospectives, doing your iteration planning. Maybe this is the time that you guys do team activities. Maybe this is the time that you guys are available if an issue arises and you have to all get on a call, right? Like, these are just things that you should be discussing. And the next one is, what tool will we use to collaborate? So we collaborate in a lot of different ways whenever we're working together. We share different artifacts. These could be, documents that we all need to review. This could be architectural diagrams. And then we also do calls where we are, possibly sharing our faces, or maybe we're not. Maybe it's just our voice. And then additionally, we need a way to communicate quickly if questions arise and we need those answers, or if issues come up and we need to get those things resolved. So really talking through what tool will we use for these things. And then the last one, I will say, sometimes the team has to be more hands-on and collaborate in a tool more like Miro or Mural. Those are a couple examples. There are several tools out there. I know there's one in Microsoft, I think it's called Whiteboard. But there's several options, and a lot of companies that I've been at or I've consulted with, I find that they have a lot of tools on hand, a lot of different systems that do a lot of the same things. And so figuring out which one works best for your team based on your working style, your learning style, your communication style, is very important for your team's success. I hope this video was helpful. Again, this was Moriah with Mogility, where we provide content related to agile and safe.